Today, my group and I will be presenting on the anatomy and physiology of chemical digestion in the mouth. My group members consist of Danielle Muhammad Ali, Keja Furman, and myself, Duan Davis. Here are 4 objectives that we will be discussing throughout the presentation. Firstly, chemical digestion. Chemical digestion involves the secretion of enzymes throughout your digestive tract that helps break the chemical bonds that holds food particles together. Next.
So, your salivary glands are the most important part of the mouth which is involved in chemical digestion. And these make a part of saliva each day, and saliva is very important as it lubricates the mouth, it helps with swallowing, protects your teeth against bacteria, and it aids in the digestion of food. There are 3 pairs of glands through which most of the saliva is secreted, and they secrete saliva through ducts. These glands are the parotid, submandibular, and sublingual glands. There are minor salivary glands which include the labial, buccal, palatine, and lingual glands. Now, the parotid gland, which is located on the inside of the cheek, are the largest salivary gland, and they secrete saliva into the oral cavity via a parotid duct that pierces the buccinator muscle to open into the vestibule opposite in the secondary molar tube. Now, the submandibular glands, which is the second largest salivary gland, are found in the floor of the mouth, and they are medial and partly inferior to the body of the mandible. Their ducts, which are the submandibular ducts, run under the mucosa on either side of the midline of the floor of the mouth, and they enter the oral cavity lateral to the lingual frenulum. The smallest of the major salivary glands are the sublingual glands, and they are found beneath the tongue and superior to the submandibular glands. Their ducts, which are the lesser sublingual ducts, open into the floor of the mouth and into the oral cavity proper. Now, the minor glands include the labial mucosa, which is located on the inside lining of the lips, and they secrete mucus and serous substances for maintaining oral health. The buccal gland, which is located on the inside lining of the cheek and floor of the mouth, secretes serous substances, while the palatine gland forms a continuous layer on the posterior surface of the mucous membrane of the soft palate and around the uvula. And these glands are pure mucous glands. The lingual gland, which is the anterior portion of the gland, is chiefly mucous in nature, whereas the posterior lingual gland are mixed.
So, how they work in digestion. Keep in mind that not all salivary glands supply the same ingredients. The parotid glands secrete a watery liquid containing salivary amylase. This provides a medium for dissolving foods so that they can be tasted by gustatory receptors and so that digestive reactions can begin. Because the submandibular glands contain cells similar to those found in the parotid glands, plus some mucous cells, they secrete a fluid that contains amylase but is thickened with mucus. The chloride ions in the saliva activate salivary amylase, an enzyme that starts the breakdown of starch in the mouth into maltose, maltotriose, and dextrin. The sublingual glands contain mostly mucus cells, so they secrete a much thicker fluid that contributes only a small amount of salivary amylase. This mucus lubricates food so it can be moved around easily in the mouth, formed into a ball called a bolus, and then swallowed. Next.
Okay, so in each gland, there are thousands of small secretory units known as acini. These units have myoepithelial cells that help them to expel secretions from their lumens. The fluid in the lumen contains water, electrolytes, and depending on the gland, mucus and or enzymes. They deposit into 3 ducts. First, the intercalated duct, then they gather into a larger striated duct and into an even larger excretory duct. Okay, so I'll explain how it works when you have to eat food. First, we'll start with the water component. There is some type of neural stimulation, whether smelling food, seeing food, thinking about it, or there are also hormones like testosterone and thyroxine that trigger this. The rough ER of these salivary cells expel calcium into the cytoplasm and create a more positive environment. This triggers the sodium, potassium, chlorine cotransporters to transport potassium out and sodium and chloride into the extracellular fluid. This creates a more positive environment outside of the cell. Calcium is then removed by the ER, and so inside of the cell now is more negative. To balance it out, chlorine is pumped by the cell into the lumen, and sodium is pumped by the extracellular fluid into the lumen. The sodium and the chloride bind together in the lumen to create sodium chloride, which is a salt, and creates a hypertonic environment. Then water is pulled out of both the extracellular fluid and the cell until the liquid in the lumen becomes isotonic. The protein components, such as the enzyme or mucin that makes up the mucus, is first made in the rough ER, and then it moves to the Golgi body where it is modified. It is then packaged into vesicles and sent to the apex of the cell. There it is considered zymogen granules and are released via exocytosis. Now is modification before we reach the ducts. Saliva is ejected from the secretory unit and goes into the intercalated duct. It moves on to the striated duct where it is modified. All of these ducts are impermeable to water, so there is only ion exchange. The striated ducts have cells with striations which help to absorb NaCl out of the liquid while secreting potassium and bicarbonate into the liquid. So by the time we get to the excretory duct, there is more NaCl inside the plasma of each cell, and there is more potassium and bicarbonate inside of the fluid. So this creates more of a hypotonic solution, and this hypotonic solution is known as saliva. The excretory duct takes it to the buccal or oral cavity where it completes its function of hydrolysis, which is breaking down the food, and lubrication of both the mouth and the bolus.
So, factors that may prevent chemical digestion. Factor 1 would be xerostomia, also known as dry mouth. So, this is a condition in which your salivary glands in your mouth do not make enough saliva to keep your mouth wet. Xerostomia can make it difficult to speak, eat, and digest food, and it can also lead to malnutrition. Extreme dry mouth and salivary gland dysfunction can produce significant anxiety, permanent mouth and throat disorders, and it can impair a person's quality of life. Now, this dry mouth can be caused by radiation, which shows fibrosis, or it can be caused by an autoimmune disease, which could show an infiltrate of B and T cells, leading to the gland dysfunction. Now, factor 2 would be salivary stones, or crystallized saliva, which causes swollen glands. This can clog the gland that releases saliva. This causes pain, and unless it's blocked, it can cause an infection. Salivary glands can also be painfully blocked by a bacterial infection. Staphylococcus aureus is the most common bacterium that infects it. If left untreated, the bacterium will cause fever, severe pain, and an abscess or pus. Thank you. That was the end of our presentation. Here are our references. Thank you for your undivided attention.